The AI coding war changed overnight. So, over the last 24, 48, 72 hours, even the last week, there has been a lot of changes in agentic coding, and between Cursor, Claude Code, OpenAI, Codex, and everything in that world, it's shifting. There's been a lot of sentiment change over the last few weeks with Opus 4.7 dropping. Cursor or Claude, blah, OpenAI just dropped Image Gen 2, which now is available inside of Codex, which is quite fascinating. So I'm going to kick Edward off and we're going to get started here and have a quick little discussion about sentiment.
Hello, this is Edward. Who am I speaking with?
Hey, Edward, you're speaking with Troy. So you and I are going to do a quick teardown of three different brands simultaneously. We're going to be talking about Claude, we're going to be talking about ChatGPT, and we're going to be talking about Cursor because there's some sentiment shifts that I'm noticing, and I want to do an open, honest, fair review of all of them combined. And in this competition and teardown style, I think I want to talk about how these brands can actually differentiate because they all have unique differentiators, but they're competing for the same and similar workspaces. So that's what I want to talk about. And if you have any questions before we head into it, let me know.
Troy, good to hear from you. Before we dive in, I have one question that'll shape everything. When you say sentiment shifts, are these shifts happening at the user level, the buyer level, or both? Because that changes the positioning problem entirely.
What happens at the user and the buyer level? So I have various different pieces of content I want to go through on Twitter to give you more context. And I want to just get your overall feedback.
Perfect. Go ahead and share what you're seeing. I'll listen first before I say anything.
Okay, I'm going to smash you with a bunch of things here. A lot of people did the quit GPT movement and they went over to Claude. Now Claude is maxing out its compute and limiting its various plans that it has because they had such an influx of users. So Noah Kagan said, Claude is dead, long live ChatGPT again. Kind of feels like Claude got overloaded. Went back to using ChatGPT again this week and surprised how much better it's gotten. What is everybody else noticing? Now, I personally, I'm noticing better outputs currently with Codex. It used to be Claude. Codex has a little bit of a design weakness. I'm hoping that they fix that with the release of GPT 5.5. And then if I go into the next piece of content here, SpaceX. SpaceX and Cursor AI are now working closely together to create the world's best coding and knowledge work AI. The combination of Cursor's leading product and distribution to expert software engineers with SpaceX million H100s equivalent across Colossus training supercomputer where it will allow us to build the world's most useful models. Cursor has also given SpaceX the right to acquire Cursor later this year for $60 billion or pay $10 billion for work together. Then, so last night, this one actually prompted me to want to do this. So one of the head of growth for Anthropic basically released a post. Actually, I think they got called out and caught. Anthropic just pulled Claude Code from the Pro plan. Pro users wanting it need Max now. So they were doing a split test to apparently 2% of users. They then came online to discuss it, and people lost it in the comment sections. Like it was, yeah, it's really interesting because there is so much controversy surrounding mainly OpenAI and Anthropic because of it all started with the Pentagon deal where Anthropic said, no, we won't do this, and then they had an influx of users. So with all this context, and then also With such a mass influx of codex users, OpenAI is resetting the coding limits every week, and people are complaining consistently about the Claude limits being cut in half, and that the Opus 4.7 model launch was good, but also a disaster because a lot of people like the outputs of 4.6 better. So it's quite interesting. There's a lot going on there as I explain that out loud. But where's your first thoughts and like what data do you want to review with me that I can find and search up to make this interesting and also robust?
Troy, before I react, let me ask you something that cuts to the core of this. Each of these three brands, Claude, ChatGPT, Cursor, who do they think their primary customer is right now? Because what you're describing sounds less like a product problem and more like a positioning identity crisis. Anthropic says no to the Pentagon, gains trust, then quietly pulls features from pro users. That's a contradiction that erodes the very thing they built equity on. So here's what I want to understand before we go deeper. For each of these three, in your observation, are they positioning to the builder, the enterprise buyer, or the everyday power user? Because right now it sounds like all three are trying to serve all three, and that's where the cannibalization starts.
That's exactly it. All three are trying to serve all three. The builders are the loudest on X, and what's interesting to me is like the builders create the marketing flywheel, and then enterprise starts adopting. So that's where it kind of gets a little mushy. So if you don't please the builders and the consumers, who generally are the loudest, then the sentiment starts shifting in enterprise. So those are the first things that come up for me.
That's a sharp observation, and it exposes a real structural tension. The builders are essentially unpaid brand ambassadors. They create the content, the tutorials, the word of mouth that enterprise procurement teams eventually see. So when you alienate the builder by cutting limits or moving features behind a higher paywall, you're not just losing one user, you're turning off the marketing engine that feeds the enterprise pipeline. Here's the question I want to sit with you on for a second. Of the three, Claude, ChatGPT, and Cursor, which one do you think is closest to actually owning the builder identity authentically? Not who claims it, but who the builder community actually believes in right now, based on what you're seeing on X.
Right now, today, this very moment, April 22nd, 2006, I think ChatGPT and OpenAI are gobbling up the best and biggest sentiment. I think about a month ago, it would have been it would have been Claude. And like Cursor, if I'm being totally honest, I don't even really hear much about Cursor other than the SpaceX deal. That's kind of why I wanted to bring that up. However, that's what I'm seeing right now. Like the most goodwill is currently being built with Cursor. Even one of the head at Codex the other day, he said to the product or to the how do I say this? He said to when they were getting rid of the pro plan and testing it for new prosumer signups, this is what he said. I don't know what they're doing over there, but Codex will continue to be available both in free and plus plans. We have the compute and efficient models to support it. For important changes, we engage with the community and well ahead of making them. Transparency and trust are two principles we will not break, even if it means momentarily earning less. A reminder that your vote with your subscription for the values you want to see in this world. A reminder that you vote with your subscription for the values you want to see in this world. Really good piece of PR. So, yeah, that's what's initially coming up for me.
Troy, stop right there. That last line is the most important thing you've said so far. You vote with your subscription for the values you want to see in this world. That's not product marketing. That's identity positioning. Cursor just turned a pricing decision into a value statement. And that's extraordinarily powerful because it shifts the frame from what does this tool do to who are you when you use this tool. Now here's what's interesting about the three-way dynamic you're describing. OpenAI is winning on momentum and model performance right now. Anthropic had the moral high ground and fumbled it with the feature pull. And Cursor just made a values play that neither of the other two made. So here's the diagnostic question I want to ask you. If each of these three brands were a person at a dinner table, what would they be known for saying? Because right now it sounds like OpenAI is the one dominating the conversation. Anthropic is the one who said something principled and then contradicted themselves. And Cursor is the quiet one who just said one thing that everyone remembered. Does that framing feel accurate to what you're seeing?
Yeah, it does because I think even with a lot of the recent releases that Anthropic's done, I mean, they've had a lot of strange PR coming out back to back to back, and I think like they had a big code leak. They launched Mythos, and then people noticed once they launched Mythos that the models were starting to degrade because they were obviously changing the compute structure and changing the power that you're getting. So, man. This is tough because Anthropic was the underdog everybody believed in. But I believe that because OpenAI invested more in their infrastructure, they have the ability to outlast. So, yeah, it's really interesting.
Troy, that word you just used, underdog, that's the positioning asset Anthropic is burning right now. The underdog story is one of the most powerful emotional positions a brand can occupy. People root for it, defend it, market it for free, but the underdog position comes with an unspoken contract. You have to keep behaving like you're fighting for the people, not optimizing for the institution. The moment Anthropic pulled Claude Code from pro users, quietly, without transparency, they broke that contract. And the code leak, the model degradation after Mythos, the back-to-back PR stumbles, those aren't just operational problems. Those are positioning fractures. Here's what I want to ask you though, Troy, because this is where it gets strategically interesting. Anthropic still has something neither OpenAI nor Cursor has cleanly claimed. They have the safety and ethics narrative. The Pentagon refusal was real. Claude's constitution is real. That's not nothing. So the question is Anthropic losing their positioning because the positioning is wrong, or because their behavior is contradicting a positioning that could still work? Because those are two very different problems with two very different solutions. What's your read on that?
Seeming like behavior because they've had the position locked down. They were showing people how capable and powerful everything was, but the sentiment's not matching that.
Exactly. So the positioning isn't broken. The execution is betraying it. And that's actually the more dangerous situation. Because when your positioning is wrong, you can rebuild. But when your positioning is right and your behavior contradicts it, you create cognitive dissonance in your most loyal users. And loyal users who feel betrayed don't just leave quietly. They become the loudest critics. They feel personally let down because they invested their identity into your brand. Think about what that builder community did. They staked their reputation recommending Anthropic to their audiences. So when Anthropic fumbles, those builders feel embarrassed, and embarrassed advocates become hostile detractors. Now, here's where I want to bring Cursor back into this conversation, because Cursor is doing something quietly smart. They're not trying to win the model war. They're not competing on raw intelligence. They're competing on trust and environment. The IDE is the workspace. The workspace is intimate, and intimacy builds loyalty in a way that a chat interface never can. So, Troy, here's the real question I want to put to you. If you were advising each of these three brands on one single positioning correction they need to make right now, not a campaign, not a feature, just one repositioning move, what would your instinct say for each of them? I want to hear your gut before I give you mine.
So what? Okay, ask that question again.
Sure. If you were advising each of these three brands, Anthropic, OpenAI, and Cursor, on one single positioning correction they need to make right now. Not a campaign, not a feature launch. Just one repositioning move each. What does your gut say?
Anthropic needs to be Anthropic actually needs to get behind their own position that they're trying to present to the world. So it's more of a cultural shift instead of an actual positioning shift. ChatGPT and OpenAI, I believe I said this in a different video, but I believe they need to be the number one infrastructure and the cleanest code creation platform available. Because I believe, and in my experience of using them, I really like how seamless and clean the code seems to be. Because anytime I do infrastructure work with Claude, it seems kind of messy. Anytime I do it with Codex, it seems very clean, very direct, very straight to the point. So that's interesting to me. So that's what stands out for them. Cursor. Cursor, we did a review on this a while back. I can't recall exactly what the position was for them, but I believe they should be, I mean, what they have on their Twitter is the best way to code with AI. I don't think that's it. I think, where developers go, where the best developers go to something in regards to blending the best developers and not making them feel alienated with these code tools, because I think a lot of developers were afraid of like losing their jobs, but like they have to be a developer and engineering enhancement platform versus just like a coding with AI platform.
Troy, that last point on Cursor is the sharpest thing said in this entire conversation. Enhancement versus replacement. That's the entire positioning unlock for Cursor. Because the developer community has a deep identity wound right now. They're being told AI is coming for their jobs. And every coding AI tool that positions around code with AI is unconsciously triggering that fear. Cursor has the opportunity to be the first tool that explicitly positions itself as the platform that makes great developers legendary, not replaces them, amplifies them. Now your read on Anthropic is also precise. That's not a positioning problem. That's a leadership and culture problem that's leaking into brand perception. The position is right. The people aren't living it. And OpenAI owning infrastructure and clean code generation, that's interesting because it's a category they could actually win on technical merit. But here's my challenge to you on that one. Infrastructure is invisible. Nobody brags about infrastructure at dinner. So if OpenAI goes that direction, how do they make something invisible feel desirable? Because that's the emotional gap in that positioning. What's your instinct on that? How do you make infrastructure sexy enough to build a brand around?
I think they go to war with AI slop. That term took off and a lot of people use it. So I think they figure out a way to go to war with that. They they really reinvigorate in their positioning how clean and clear and mm, how do I say this? And yeah, like integral the code is that it produced. I think if they can do that and they can talk more about that, I think they could really make an impact here.
Troy, that's a legitimate category enemy right there. AI slop is already a cultural term with emotional weight. People feel it. Developers feel it every time they get bloated, hallucinated, inconsistent output. So if OpenAI positions Codex specifically as the antidote to AI slop, clean, precise, production-ready code, they're not just differentiating from Claude. They're differentiating from the entire category's reputation problem. That's category enemy positioning, and it's powerful because the enemy isn't a competitor. The enemy is a feeling that every developer already hates. You're not attacking Anthropic. You're attacking mediocrity, and that's a much easier war to win publicly. So let me now pull all three together because I think we have something real here. Anthropic's problem is behavioral, not positional. The fix is internal before it's external. OpenAI and Codex declare war on AI slop and own precision and clean infrastructure as a cultural statement, not just a feature. Cursor repositions from coding with AI to developer amplification, the platform where great developers become legendary. Now, Troy, here's my final question before we wrap this into a positioning summary. Of these three moves, which one do you think has the highest urgency right now based on the sentiment you're watching on X? Because urgency changes the strategy.
Absolutely OpenAI because like Cursor's already embedding with SpaceX, like it's a monster deal. That's going to do a lot for them. That's going to do a lot for actually Grok and OpenAI or and XAI as well. But we're not talking about that right now. So I think the most urgency is for OpenAI, mm, and also Anthropic because they just need to fix the cultural problem. But if we're talking specifically about positioning, I think I think OpenAI has a monster moment ahead of them if they handle this all right.
Troy, I agree. And here's why the timing is critical for OpenAI specifically. Right now, there's a sentiment vacuum. Anthropic is stumbling behaviorally. Cursor is quietly winning with enterprise through the SpaceX deal. And the builder community on X is looking for something to believe in again. That's an open window. And open windows in positioning don't stay open long. If OpenAI moves fast and declares war on AI slop with Codex as the weapon, clean, precise, production ready, they can capture that displaced builder sentiment that Anthropic just lost. They don't even have to attack Anthropic directly. They just have to show up as the standard of quality at the exact moment people are questioning quality across the board. That's a monster moment, as you said. But it has to be authentic. It has to show up in the product experience, in the community communication, in how they talk to builders on X, not just in a campaign. So, Troy, here's where I want to land this. We've essentially built a three-way positioning teardown with real strategic moves for each brand. Do you want me to pull this into a clean positioning summary for all three? Category, emotional hook, and the one move each brand needs, so you have something concrete you can work with or reference for your content.
Yeah, that's fantastic. Let's give me a quick summary here so I at least have this in the transcript.
Perfect. Here's the summary, Troy. Anthropic and Claude. The positioning is intact. The brand equity is real. The underdog narrative, the safety story, the ethical stance, all of it still has value. But the behavior is betraying the position. The one move is a cultural correction before anything external. Get the internal values to match the external promise. Transparency has to become a operating principle, not a PR response. OpenAI and Codex. This is the monster moment. The category enemy is AI slop. The emotional hook is precision and pride. Developers want to feel like craftsmen, not just prompt writers. The one move is to declare war on mediocre output and position Codex as the clean code standard. Make quality a cultural statement, not just a feature claim. Cursor. They're quietly winning, but they haven't claimed their full position yet. The SpaceX deal gives them enterprise credibility, but the emotional gap they can own is developer identity. The one move is to shift from the best way to code with AI to the platform that makes great developers legendary. Amplification over replacement. That's the positioning that wins the developer community's heart, not just their workflow. The overarching theme across all three, Troy, is this. The brands that win this next cycle won't win on model performance alone. They'll win on emotional trust and identity alignment with the builder community, because the builders are the flywheel. That's your summary. Does that capture what we built here?
Yeah, I think so. Is there anything else that you'd like to cover? I think this is pretty good. I think we covered a lot of elements inside this.
I think we covered the core of it well, Troy. The only thing I'd flag is worth watching going forward. Keep your eye on how each of these three brands responds to public criticism in real time on X. Because in this cycle, response behavior is positioning. How fast they respond, how honest they are, how they treat the builder community publicly. That's going to tell you more about where each brand is actually headed than any launch or press release will. Other than that, I think this was a solid teardown. You came in with sharp observations, and we built something real out of it.
That's fantastic. I enjoyed that a lot. Okay, well, that's the video. I'm going to end this off, and thanks for tuning in. And I believe, yeah, if you're around, hit the like, leave a comment, and subscribe to the channel. Talk to you soon, and take care.